The old grandfather clock in the hall chimed midnight, each resounding strike echoing the emptiness in my heart. I stared at the engagement ring on my finger, a simple silver band with a small, unassuming sapphire, a stark contrast to the flamboyant diamond Mark had insisted on for his mother's approval. A bitter laugh escaped my lips. Approval. That's all it ever came down to with the Hendersons. They say love is blind. Maybe it is, but it also makes you incredibly stupid. For 2 years, I was blind. Blind to the red flags, deaf to the whispers of doubt, all for a man who put his parents' approval above everything, even me. We had such good times at first, Mark and I. Laughter came easily, and inside jokes filled our evenings. He was my world. We'd spend hours curled on my worn sofa, debating the merits of obscure indie films or planning fantastical, improbable trips around the globe. He'd bring me late-night coffees when I was up against a deadline, and I'd cheer him on from the sidelines of his amateur soccer games, even though I barely understood the rules. Our connection felt effortless, a natural fit. He saw me, truly saw me, beyond the superficial. Or so I thought. Then I met the Hendersons. Their house was grand, almost comically so, perched atop a hill overlooking the city, like a monument to their self-importance. A sweeping driveway led to a colossal front door, flanked by Grecian columns, that seemed to mock the modest entryway of my own apartment building. Inside, every surface gleamed with polished marble and ornate gold leaf. It was a museum, not a home. Eleanor, Mark's mother, was all perfectly coiffed blonde hair and frosty superiority, her eyes appraising everyone and everything with a critical gaze. She carried herself with the kind of practiced elegance that screamed old money, even though I later learned their wealth was relatively new, built on a foundation of aggressive business practices. Richard, his father, had a perpetually patronizing smirk plastered across his face, as if he found amusement in the sheer inadequacy of everyone around him. He spoke in clipped, authoritative tones, his words designed to command attention and instill a sense of his undeniable importance. Their criticisms started subtly, almost imperceptibly at first, disguised as polite inquiries or thinly veiled concern. Eleanor's backhanded compliments about my quaint apartment or my interesting career as a graphic designer, delivered with a saccharine smile that never quite reached her eyes. "It's so artistic, dear," she'd purr, making artistic sound like a synonym for impractical or destined for poverty. Richard's condescending remarks about my lack of a trust fund or a proper family name, often punctuated with a dismissive wave of his hand. He'd ask leading questions about my family history, clearly fishing for evidence of a lineage that met his lofty standards, and always finding it wanting. Mark, always caught in the middle, would offer weak apologies and promises of change that never materialized. "They don't mean anything by it, Clara," he'd whisper later, stroking my hair as if to soothe the child. "It's just their way. They're old-fashioned." But his excuses rang hollow, even to his own ears. I could see the conflict in his eyes, the tug-of-war between his desire to please his parents and his supposed love for me. It was a battle he was consistently losing, and I, unknowingly, was the casualty. They never liked me. It was a truth as clear as the sapphire on my finger. I wasn't from their world. I wasn't rich enough, connected enough, or God forbid, them enough. My independent spirit, which Mark had once claimed to adore, was seen as defiance, my modest background as a mark of shame. They wanted a docile, well-connected heiress, someone who would seamlessly blend into their gilded cage. I was a wild card, an unpredictable element in their carefully constructed narrative of perfection. But Mark, he always said he loved me. He always said he'd stand up to them. I believed him, clinging to those words like a lifeline in a turbulent sea. I desperately wanted to believe that our love was strong enough to overcome their prejudices, that his devotion to me would ultimately outweigh his need for their approval. I was wrong. The engagement party was excruciating, a lavish affair held at a country club so exclusive you needed an ancestry report to even get past the gate. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume and unspoken judgment. Eleanor, mic in hand, her voice amplified for maximum impact, delivered a toast that barely veiled her disdain for me, praising Mark for elevating himself and finally finding someone who understands his potential. Her words were a dagger, twisting in the wound of my already bruised ego. She spoke of Mark as a prized possession, and me as a fortunate acquisition, a necessary step in his upward trajectory. Then Richard, emboldened by the clinking of champagne glasses and the sycophantic murmurs of their guests, loudly suggested a prenuptial agreement, citing protecting their son's future. The words hung in the air, heavy with accusation. My polite mask almost cracked. I felt a cold dread seep into my bones as I caught Mark's eye across the room. He looked away, embarrassed, offering no defense, no reassurance, just a coward's glance. In that moment, I knew. The dream I had so fiercely clung to was nothing more than a mirage. Later that night, back in my small apartment, the silence was deafening, broken only by the frantic pounding of my heart. The lingering scent of cheap champagne and betrayal filled the air. The inevitable argument erupted, not with a bang, but with a whimper, the final breath of a dying hope. "Mark!" My voice trembled, a fragile whisper that barely masked the tremor of my rage. "Did you hear them? They practically said I was a gold digger. And you just stood there." My hands clenched into fists, nails digging into my palms, trying to ground myself against the rising tide of despair. He was flustered, pacing my small living room like a caged animal. "Clara, you know how my parents are. It's just their way. They're trying to protect me." He ran a hand through his hair, avoiding my gaze, his words a well-worn excuse that had lost all meaning. The same tired lines, trotted out every time his parents trampled over my feelings. "Protect you from me?" I asked, incredulous, my voice rising. "From the woman you supposedly love? Mark, do you even want to marry me, or are you just trying to please them?" The question hung in the air, a final, desperate plea for honesty. He paused, a long, agonizing silence that stretched into an eternity, punctuated only by the frantic beat of my own heart. The silence spoke volumes. It was the answer I had feared, the confirmation of every doubt, every whispered insecurity. "Clara, maybe it's not the right time." My world shattered, not with a dramatic crash, but with a quiet, sickening implosion. The engagement ring, once a symbol of hope, of a shared future, now felt like a shackle, a heavy burden on my finger. Slowly, deliberately, I slipped it off, the cool metal feeling alien against my skin. It seemed to pulse with the accumulated weight of his betrayals, their scorn, and my own foolish optimism. I placed it gently on the coffee table, a small silver accusation. That night, something in me snapped. The pain was still there, a raw, gaping wound, but beneath it, a cold, calculated rage began to simmer, a hard knot of determination forming in my gut. They wanted to destroy me? Fine. They wanted to make me feel small and insignificant? They wanted to watch me wither and disappear? Not a chance. If they thought they could walk away from this unscathed, they were gravely mistaken. I wasn't going down alone. My revenge started meticulously, born from a sleepless night fueled by coffee and a burning desire for justice. Late nights became my norm, the soft glow of my laptop illuminating stacks of financial documents, property records, and corporate filings related to Henderson Industries, their family's construction company. The irony wasn't lost on me. Their quaint graphic designer was now dissecting their empire. My graphic design skills, once a target of their sneers, became my weapon, transforming dense, indecipherable data into clear, compelling visual representations of their malfeasance. Flowcharts tracing money, laundering schemes, infographics detailing inflated contract bids, timelines illustrating a pattern of environmental negligence. I discreetly reached out to disgruntled former employees, their whispers of injustice now given a voice. I found small business owners who had been unfairly squeezed out by the Hendersons, their livelihoods crushed under the weight of their ruthless tactics. I even contacted a few minor shareholders whose investments had quietly dwindled while the Hendersons enriched themselves. I methodically documented every instance of their shady dealings, bribes paid to local officials, cutting corners on building materials that compromised structural integrity, illegal land appropriation that displaced vulnerable communities, flagrant environmental violations that poisoned local water sources. Every piece of information was meticulously verified, cross-referenced, and categorized. They had built their empire on sand, a foundation of lies and exploitation, and I was going to be the earthquake that brought it all down. This wasn't about bitterness anymore. It was about exposing the truth. My plan unfolded in carefully orchestrated moves, each step calculated to maximize impact and minimize my direct involvement, maintaining an essential layer of anonymity. First, I anonymously leaked a carefully selected portion of my findings to a small independent investigative journalism outfit known for its tenacious pursuit of truth. The initial articles were cautious, hinting at irregularities without directly accusing, planting the seeds of doubt in the public consciousness. They were just enough to pique interest, to get people talking and wondering. Then, using my graphic design skills and a deep understanding of online virality, I created anonymous, visually compelling social media posts and a dedicated website. The site meticulously detailed the Hendersons' history of questionable business practices, presenting the information not as dry legal jargon, but as a compelling narrative supported by irrefutable evidence. Infographics and digestible summaries made the complex financial and legal information accessible to everyone, not just those versed in corporate law. I used compelling visuals, before and after photos of neglected construction sites, charts showing the suspicious flow of funds, maps highlighting illegally acquired land. The posts went viral, fueled by the outrage of ordinary citizens and the hunger for scandal. Hashtags like Henderson fraud and justice for locals began trending, spreading like wildfire across the digital landscape. Finally, with public opinion simmering, I contacted a highly respected, albeit feared, corporate attorney Known for taking on high-profile, seemingly unwinnable cases against powerful corporations, I provided them with an undeniable treasure trove of evidence, meticulously organized recordings of incriminating conversations, leaked emails that laid bare their fraudulent schemes, photographic proof of substandard materials, and environmental damage. The attorney, seeing not just a high-profile case, but also a strong likelihood of success and a clear path to significant damages for the aggrieved parties, agreed to represent the former employees and small business owners I'd contacted. It was the linchpin of my plan, the legal hammer that would deliver the final blow. News headlines flashed across my screen, a symphony of their downfall. Henderson Industries under scrutiny. Local businesses allege fraud against Henderson Corp. Environmental watchdog launches. Investigation into Henderson development. The Hendersons' carefully crafted image, their facade of respectability, began to crumble under the relentless onslaught of public scrutiny and legal challenges. Eleanor's socialite appearances were met with cold stares and whispered condemnations instead of fawning admiration. Richard's golf buddies avoided his calls, their fair-weather friendships dissolving in the face of scandal. Mark, caught in the crossfire of his parents' imploding empire, looked increasingly stressed and isolated, his once charming demeanor replaced by a haggard, anxious expression. Their world, once so impregnable, was spiraling into chaos. The climax arrived with a televised press conference, broadcast live from the steps of the courthouse. The formidable corporate attorney, flanked by the brave former employees and the resilient small business owners, laid out the full extent of the Hendersons' illegal activities with devastating precision. Every accusation was backed by irrefutable evidence, presented with a clarity that left no room for doubt. I watched from home, a silent spectator to the undoing of their empire, seeing the live feed on my laptop. Eleanor looking pale and utterly defeated, her carefully constructed composure shattered, her eyes wide with a mix of shock and dawning horror. Richard's face was contorted in a mix of fury and disbelief, his usual patronizing smirk replaced by a grimace of pure, unadulterated rage. Mark was conspicuously absent, perhaps hiding from the storm, or perhaps already beginning to distance himself from the wreckage. Justice, slow and methodical, was finally being served. Now I'm back in my apartment, the air lighter, cleaner. The scattered papers of my research are gone, replaced by a clean desk and a single thriving blooming plant, a symbol of new beginnings. I'm no longer staring at a ring that represented a painful past, but at a meticulously crafted business plan for my own graphic design firm. The sapphire ring sits in a small box in my drawer, a relic of a lesson learned. It's no longer a symbol of heartbreak, but a reminder of the strength I found within myself. They tried to break me. They tried to tell me I wasn't good enough, that my worth was tied to their approval and their superficial standards. But what they didn't realize was that I had something they never would: integrity. And that, in the end, was my greatest weapon, my most powerful asset. It was the foundation upon which I rebuilt my life, stronger and more authentic than ever before. The emptiness in my heart has been filled, not by love for another, but by respect for myself and the quiet satisfaction of seeing justice prevail.